Well, hello, Perry Community Church and Jerudicil. A pleasure to connect with you guys and hopefully bring you some encouragement through the Word of God. We find ourselves in Psalm chapter 5, and this is what the psalmist says. Give ear to my words, O Lord. Consider my groaning. Give attention to the sound of my cry, my King and my God. For to you do I pray. O Lord, in the morning you hear my voice. In the morning I prepare a sacrifice for you and watch. For you are not a God who delights in wickedness. Evil may not dwell with you. The boastful shall not stand before your eyes. You hate all evildoers. You destroy those who speak lies. The Lord abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. But I, through the abundance of your steadfast love, will enter your house. I will bow down toward your holy temple in the fear of you. Lead me, O Lord, in your righteousness. Because of my enemies, make your way straight before me. For there is no truth in their mouth. Their inmost self is destruction. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongue. Make them bear their guilt, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Because of the abundance of their transgression, cast them out, for they have rebelled against you. But let all who take refuge in you rejoice. Let them ever sing for joy and spread your protection over them, that those who love your name may exalt in you. For you bless the righteous, O Lord. You cover him with a favor as with a shield. David is in a tough place. Maybe you've been there. He's in the midst of an insurrection led by his son Absalom, who has declared himself to be the king. Those who should be for him are against him. Maybe you can relate. Those who should support you, you find them betraying you. Those who you go to for solace, you leave feeling sorrow. You, like David, may have total trust that God has a plan for you. Like David, you know that God has called you into this plan. Maybe, like David, you can recall God confirming his calling on your life at a young age. You have never felt so close to entering into that promise only to begin seeing it drift further and further out of your grasp. You find yourself being a recipient of curses instead of blessings. You're more discouraged than encouraged and more insecure about what God is doing than ever before. And you don't know what to do, and you're struggling with how to respond. Well, what does David do? Well, we see David goes to the only one who knows what to do and to the only one who can do anything about his struggles, his king and his God. David says, give ear to my words, O Lord. Consider my groaning. Give attention to the sound of my cry, my King and my God, for to you do I pray. David pleads with God to hear his desperation in his cry for help. This is a man with no other options and no other recourse. He is lacking the mental and emotional energy to even articulate his pain and suffering to God. All he can do is give God his groanings. Maybe you've been there. All you have left to give to God is your inaudible, exhausted cries from the depth of your soul. But he knows only God can save. And maybe God won't step in and save him. But at this point, only God offers the potential for that possibility. And David knows that above every authority is the greatest authority, which is why David calls out to his king. David goes to the only firmly sovereign, fully capable, final authority, God, the King of the entire universe. Maybe you've been there. You may have your spouse, your friends, and your confidant, all willing to hear you out, but none able to help you out. Only God, his King and his Lord, can help him and you now. O Lord, in the morning you hear my voice. In the morning I prepare a sacrifice for you and watch. This is not David's first knocking at the door of God's throne room. Every morning David presses in for a moment to make his request to God. Maybe you've been there. You make it your diligence, your discipline to cry out to God during those sleepless nights and exhausting mornings. You, like David, know that he hears you. You know he isn't deaf to your cries. You are confident that he will respond to you and come to your rescue. So you boldly and confidently bang on his chamber door every morning. Maybe this will be the day he answers that door. For you are not a God who delights in wickedness. Evil may not dwell with you. The boastful shall not stand before your eyes. You hate all evildoers. You destroy those who speak lies. The Lord abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. Maybe you've been there. God cannot be okay with this. He has to know that this is unjust, that this is unfair, that this is undeserved. You, like David, cry out to him, I know that what they're doing to me disgusts you. I know you see and are angry with them. I know you hate the wicked that is being done to me. You know that what they are saying against me is false, and I'm not guilty of their accusations. But I, through the abundance of your steadfast love, will enter your house. I will bow down to your holy temple in the fear of you. David, however, is confident that the overwhelming anger and hostility from man is no match for the overwhelming love and faithfulness of God. This indeed is good news to hear. David knows that God didn't anoint him king to never appoint him to that position. Maybe you've been there. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. But do some plans fall through? Surely not. Nothing of the counsel of God can be thwarted. What he has declared will be fulfilled. You need to know that whatever God has destined you to be and has determined for you to do will happen. This is all through the abundance of God's steadfast, never giving up, always faithful love. David knows one day he will worship in the temple of God. Lead me, O Lord, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make your way straight before me. David knows that if he wants to be distinguished from his enemies, he needs to live differently than his enemies. But it's tough. Maybe you've been there. Part of you is tempted to treat them how they are treating you. Some would say you'd be justified. Some would say, give them a taste of their own medicine, or give them what's coming to them. David knows that if he responds in the flesh, he might receive the deserved glory. But he's not seeking his glory. He's seeking God's glory. For this reason, he pleads for God to lead him down the path that is altogether righteous. David knows that there's only one path that will bring glory and praise to God. And David wants that way to be clear. Clearly marked, cleared of obstacles, and clear of turns and detours. Would you prefer to be called righteous by God or by man? David knows that there is a greater benefit to pursue the path that leads to the praise of God than the praise of himself. David knows that to be declared righteous by God is better than to be declared righteous by man. And David is willing to release his pursuit of pride and instead pursue the righteousness of God, because he knows that pride is the beginning of reluctance towards God. And reluctance is the beginning of resistance of God. And resistance is the beginning of rebellion against God. For there is no truth in their mouth. Their inmost self is destruction. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongue. Make them bear their guilt, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Because of the abundance of their transgressions, cast them out, for they have rebelled against you. David is trusting in God to deliver the enemy to judgment. This is a big decision for David, to trust God in the handling of his enemies. David says, God, I trust that you will hold them accountable for their actions. They will have to answer for what they're doing. But notice David's defense, for they have rebelled against you. David knows that they have rebelled against him. It is him, David, they are resisting and have removed from the throne. But David knows that God is the one who appointed him. So rightly, David says, I know they're actively rebelling, resisting, and rejecting you. Do you understand and believe this? That the hurt that people bring on you, they are seeking to bring on God. The insults that they hurl at you, they are really hurling at God. The mistreatment, misery, and maliciousness they place on you, they place on God. The wickedness, vileness, and cruelty that is done to you, they do to God. We are ultimately the recipients of misplaced rage, rejection, and rebellion against God. But God will not overlook what's happening to you. In fact, Paul says in 2 Thessalonians 1:6, God considers it just to repay with affliction those who afflict you. They will bear their guilt at the right time. But David says, but let all who take refuge in you rejoice. Let them ever sing for joy, and spread your protection over them, that those who love your name may exalt in you. For the one who takes refuge in the presence of God, who is led on the path of God, who delights in the truth of God, and finds pleasure in the righteousness of God, will rejoice. For God will redeem and God will rescue. Let the one, even in the midst of their trouble and tribulation, rejoice out of the anticipation of the redemption. Let the one, even in the midst of the raging storm, rejoice out of the anticipation of the rescue. The joyous exclaims of those who take refuge in God are prior to their receiving their victory. They can do this because they know that their victory is so certain that they are already celebrating what God has done for them prior to him even doing it. And David concludes, for you bless the righteous, O Lord. You cover him with favor as with a shield. David declares that those who seek the righteousness of God are called righteous. The one who pursues the straight path of the Lord will find blessing and protection. The blessing may not be financial, and the protection may not be physical. The greatest blessing one could ever receive from God is to know that they have found favor and grace with God. This favor is a shield that prevents the strongest, most aggressive, or most numerous of adversaries to destroy or weaken our greatest treasure, our relationship with God. And this is what I need you to know. To know and understand that God will protect the salvation of his children. The enemy may claim many things, but it has no claim over your soul. This possession is so securely handled in the stronghold of God's hands. He may permit great loss, burdens, frustrations, and sorrow into your life, but no one can ever take you out of his eternal life. David's plea in Psalm 5 was not the only time he cried out to the Lord, and it will not be yours either. Many were against David, and many may be against you, but do not fear. For God has defanged, declawed, and disarmed the enemy, so that what they're ultimately seeking to do, what they're ultimately trying to have as their objective and goal, can never be carried out. So continue to cry out to God and confirm to him that you know that he is worthy to hear both your pleas and your praises. Rejoice in the Lord for the victory he has already delivered for you, but may not have delivered to you yet. And one day, God will gather all the righteous into eternity to live in a permanent relationship with him. And that day there will be no more pain, no more suffering, no more abuse, no more grief, and no more hardship. And Jesus invites you to be there. I hope you find this encouraging to you and to your soul. Continue pressing in to the presence of God, for He hears, He sees, and He will deliver.